Hello everyone, and welcome to Michael T. Makes. Today we're diving into an exciting DIY project, building your very own 14-inch laser engraved wooden lighthouse. Whether you're a seasoned craftsman or a beginner looking for a fun and rewarding project, this step-by-step guide will help you create a stunning piece that adds a touch of nautical charm to any space. So grab your tools and kit and let's get started on this illuminating journey. After the kit arrives in the mail, it will be wise to check the contents and get everything in order for assembly. The kit contents will include 3 wooden panels and a bag of hardware to complete the build of the lighthouse. Panel 1, with 5 lighthouse sides. Panel 2, having the lighthouse side with door. 6 star points. 6 short window seam covers. 6 long side seam covers. 6 roof panels. 6 window panes. 6 left and 6 right corbel supports, and with the addition of 6 roof panel seam covers. With panel 3 consisting of the large base support with lighthouse base inside, and 8 polygons, 7 for the lighthouse socket, and 1 remaining for the top of the lighthouse itself. 1 star support with inner roof support inside, 1 upper light support with 6 light rail inside. And the last polygon is the upper base support with round light socket base. Included is the railing for the lighthouse, with 4 long rails for the base, 5 more medium rails for the light structure, and 4 small rails for the remainder of the lighthouse base. A bag of hardware is included in the kit, including 2 tubes of superglue, 3 slide lever connectors, 1 micro screwdriver, 2 batteries, 1 battery pack, 1 micro button with leads, 1 white flickering LED with pre-wired 12-volt resistor, and 4 rubber bands to help hold things in place while working. Getting the other panels out of the way, we can start getting the lighthouse sides out of the first panel. Flipping it over, you will find that there are tabs on the cutout lines that have not been cut by the laser. These are put here for ease of pulling from the machine and for shipping. When breaking the tabs, it is important to do so in a proper way so as not to damage the good wood. Stretching the tabs is the best way to break them apart, or you can use a precision blade to cut the tabs. The kit comes with a beveled flathead micro screwdriver that you can press on the tabs and cuts right into them for easy removal. Once all the side panels are removed, I stacked them up and proceeded with removal of the second panel. Matching the sizes of the fences, I stacked the 3 sizes up into the side. The support corbels come in left and right. You can see the difference in that one side looks more vibrant than the other. This will be the outside of the support corbels. Stacking them out of the way and flipping the board over to see the tabs, I begin removing the last side panel for the lighthouse, which has the front door towards the bottom. The long strips are for covering the seams of the edges of the lighthouse base. The shorter strips are for covering the sides of the lighthouse structure windows. And the little triangle-shaped points are to insert in the star support tabs to hold the sides of the lighthouse walls into place after squeezing them into the star. We'll see more on how that's done later. Making sure everything was stacked neatly off to the side, it's time to remove the remaining pieces from the last panel. Most of the pieces fell right out of the panel, but the one roof panel needed a little help, so I pressed it out and cleaned up the little wood fiber that was left over with a blade. Getting the windows in order and stacking them off to the side, I could then stack the polygons together and have a clean work area to start removing all the waste from the pieces. The majority of it is easy. I like to look at the back side of the pieces and press them to the front to stretch the tabs or wood fibers from the back as to not damage the front of the individual pieces. The honeycomb-shaped pieces will be stacked together to make a light socket to hold the LED in place, with one remaining for the top of the lighthouse roof. After getting the fences cleaned up, I made sure the rest of the little squares are out of the base sides in order to get ready for assembly. Last is to make sure to get out all the waste pieces from the base, and it's time to start taking count on all the pieces we have to put together for the lighthouse. 6 windows, 6 roof panels, 4 small rails for the base, 6 light rails, 4 long rails for the base, 6 right corbel supports, 6 left corbel supports, 6 triangle points, 1 tiny polygon for the rooftop, 1 round with the hole, and the remaining tiny polygons for the light socket. 1 lighthouse base for the bottom, 1 light base, 1 star support, 1 light structure top support, 1 top base support, 1 inner roof support, 6 side panels with 1 having a door, 6 side panel seam cover long strips, 6 window seam short strips, and 6 roof panel seam covers. Having all the pieces we need to assemble the structure itself, the best thing is to start off by building the roof. That way it will be ready to handle when we get it ready to put on. I start by aligning the roof panels face down on the work surface, in a pie shape as shown. Place a piece of tape across the seams to hold the panels together. and bring the two ends together and match the edges up, joining the sticky of the tape, creating the roof shape. Using the roll of tape as a work surface, you can place the roof upside down in the center to hold the roof in place, and pressing on the support and pushing on the outside edges of the roof in to align it all up while drying, allowing you to glue the inner roof support in place and hold some rigidity to the roof. I'm using thin superglue here so it runs real fast and cures up pretty quickly too. The kit comes with 2 small tubes of superglue to glue everything into place. Once the glue is on, set it to the side to dry completely. Next, it's time to start on making the light socket. Gathering all the tiny polygons but one, and using the screwdriver shaft, I aligned all the loops together to make the tube and glued them together. Then glued them onto the base of the light socket, which is a small flat disc with a hole in it. Setting the light socket to the side for later, let's make sure to understand the wiring of the lighthouse before we make and insert it into the base. The kit comes with 3 lever connectors to hold the wires together. Inside the connector is a metal jaw that clamps down on the wire to hold connection. The black lead of the battery pack can be connected to the black lead on the LED. The red lead on the battery pack can be connected to the red lead on the button. Making the final connection here from the black lead on the button to the white lead on the LED. Putting the batteries in to test the LED before putting inside to make sure it all works shows that the button functions as it should, as well as the rest of the wiring. Now that the wiring is understood, it's time to make the base of the lighthouse. I use another roll of tape to help with this, since the feet stick out at the bottom and have a spot that can more dangle down and be out of the way so the panels stay in place better. There is one small hole in the base. This is for the on-off button. This will be right behind the door. Always orienting the hole on the front side while working, getting the side panels in place will be the next step in the process. Placing 2 panels in the opposing sides of the base, we can now insert the top base support to hold the 2 panels more square to each other. Holding the top with one hand, we will now take this time to insert the star-shaped structure into the middle of the side panels. Keeping the star tab down as to not scuff the face surface, we can press it into place and slide the support up into the respective slot on the panel. Once in place, using a triangle point to push underneath the star tab to hold the sides into place. At this time, squeezing the base together at the middle, the opposing side can be inserted into the hole and another point can be added to hold the star into place. Grabbing the superglue, it is wise to go ahead and glue the points into place. Turning the lighthouse upside down, I place a drop or two of superglue in between the star tab and the triangle point. After putting a little glue on the bottom feet, the lighthouse could be set back down. At this rate, the lighthouse will stand on its own, and a coffee break might be necessary. Placing the feet of the third side panel into place, the top holding tab can be put into place, getting ready to insert the star tab. Again, it's wise to press down on the star tab when sliding it into place to not scut the top of the tab. After getting it slid up and into place, we can add a point and glue it into place. Upon getting the fourth panel into place, I decided to go ahead and put some glue at the top of the base structure to make sure the tops did not spread out of place. Doing the exact same thing to the fourth panel as the last ones, pushing down the star tab and sliding it in place, I had to use a screwdriver to make sure the tab was pushed up properly. If you must do so, push up inside the support. If you press the tab, it might break. And getting a point glued into the bottom side to hold the panel into place. Panel 5 goes in the same and gets glued up the same. Now taking the time to glue the rest of the top and base into place. Before placing the last side panel onto the lighthouse, we will need to hook up the electrical portion of the base. Taking the time to glue the light socket onto the light structure base, the LED can be inserted and the wires can be hooked together. Both wires from the battery pack can get a lever connector. Second, connecting the red wire from the battery pack to the red wire on the button. Third, connecting the black wire from the button to the white wire on the LED. And finishing the connections with the black wire from the LED to the black wire on the battery pack. Once again, checking the button to make sure it works. The hardware can now be inserted into the lighthouse base to finish putting the final side onto the lighthouse. Matching the inner holes of the lighthouse base to the tabs on top of the base itself, the light structure can be wiggled down and snapped into place. Once in place, lift the open side up so as to accept the last panel to the lighthouse side, and taking the time to insert the button into the corresponding hole on the base support and making sure it moves freely up and down. Now it's time to add the final panel onto the base of the lighthouse. inserting the bottom feet in first, and sliding the top tab into place, the final tab of the star support can be put into place. This one is tricky. With the panel in place and supporting the opposite side for pressure, the panel can be pressed in and held with a thumb. Using the screwdriver, it's best to reach behind the panel and press down the star support from the inside to finish pressing the side panel into place and allowing the star tab to spring back up into the notch for holding. Then it's adding the final point and gluing it into place. I then use the tip of the precision blade to score lines on the bottom of the battery pack. That way, when I put it into place, the drying glue had something to hold on to other than a smooth plastic. The wood side is porous enough to accept the glue. Holding it into place for a moment, I then added a couple drops of super glue to the screw holes in the battery pack. That way it'll lock down faster. After setting aside to dry for about 30 minutes, I then finished gluing the rest of the base top and light bottom into place by gluing the tab and slot areas to keep the glue from being visible. After I felt that was good enough, the windows can be added to the top support, holding some angle to the windows. The top support can be glued to the top of the windows as they get put in, as long as the top support stays level. After a few of the windows are in and glued at the top, a few drops of glue can be added at the bottom to hold the windows down as well. Sometimes it's best to just hold it all together and wait a little longer for the adhesive to set up. Once all 6 windows are glued up in place, the next step is to cover the window seams with the shorter window strips. A rubber band holds them on the structure until ready to be set and glued into place. Using the screwdriver to pick up the rubber band makes it easier to maneuver around. Positioning the rubber band to hold them downward, I could then align the strips even once all are on and in place, and glue down one side. Once it's glued, I move to the opposite side so as not to disturb the fresh glue, and then work the rest of the way around. Once the window strips are glued and into place, the roof can be placed on top. Giving a good visual all the way around to make sure the roof is even, and pressing the roof down onto the lighthouse, a couple drops of glue can be placed under the panels to adhere the roof onto the top of the windows. Once the roof will stay in place, the remaining sides can be glued down. Doing so upside down will prevent glue from running down the sides of the windows. Holding firmly into place for about 30 seconds or so, the lighthouse can be flipped right side up and gluing the last polygon onto the top for aesthetics. Allowing that to dry for a few minutes. Another rubber band is placed towards the bottom of the lighthouse base to get ready for glue on the side seam covers. The rubber band is placed along the stripes of the side panel to be out of the way for gluing. Glue will be placed along the clear portion of the side panels only. If the glue is placed where the stripes are engraved, the glue will end up traveling across the grooves of the stripes and showing darker. Making sure the strip is pushed all the way to the base, and even all the way up over the seam, it will be ready for gluing. Starting at the base and putting a couple drops at the bottom helps the strips to stay in place down low, just in case it needs adjusting up higher. As for gluing the strips down to the sides, they don't always touch both sides of the panels. Sometimes it's just one side. But once a strip is at least glued down on one side, it's sufficient enough to hold in place. Going one after one, all 6 sides, gluing the bottom, and then making sure the strip is even all the way up, making sure only to glue on the unengraved portions of the panel. Once the bottom half is complete, the rubber bands can be moved up, and then glue the remaining portion of the strips. After all 6 strips are glued onto the side seams, the support corbels can be added to the bottom of the light structure walkway. Choosing one side corbel at a time to work with, I went around the lighthouse gluing them into place. I find it easiest to insert the bottom tab and then slide the top tab into the corresponding hole directly above, then snapping them into place. Once in place, gluing them as you go is pretty much essential to holding them while you work. After the corbels were all in place and glued in, the lighthouse can be stood back upright to start adding the rails to the top. These will be the middle-sized rails and easily slide into place on the top walkway with a drop of glue down in one of the holes to hold it in place. Once all are in place and have a little glue holding them in, the lighthouse can then be turned upside down to glue the bottom side of the rails in place. After the top rails are in, the bottom rails can be put into place. The larger rails fit to the sides and the shorter rails fit to the front and to the back of the lighthouse. Fitting in the front long piece and gluing the middle, the next long piece can be inserted and glued to hold in place for the time being. Continuing on to the other side, putting in the last of the long 2 rails, they can be glued in one spot. When it's flipped over, the gluing can be finished. After the long sides are put in, the remaining 4 short sides can be put in and spot glued to be finished gluing from the underside when complete. After the last rails are in place, glue is then dropped into the bottom side of the protruding rails under the base to hold all the bottom rails into place. At this time, any remaining pieces can be glued and taken care of. After everything on the base was glued up and ready, the last thing to do is add the roof panel seam covers for a more finished look. Grabbing the last tiny polygon and one of the roof panel seam covers, checking the placement before gluing will be necessary for all 6 strips to align properly. Keeping a good eye for adjustment, the strips can be placed with the round end just protruding down past the roof panel. Another option is to grab 2 strips and bring the points together at the top of the roof and find the best placement with the tips touching. Once the decision has been made, glue can be applied to the back of the strips and placed over the seams to add the aesthetics. And going around the rooftop and applying all the strips to cover the seams. Getting the last one on. One final thing. We'll add the last tiny polygon for the rooftop. After making sure it's level, a few drops of glue can be added to hold the piece in place. Now, we can add the batteries and enjoy the fruits of our labor.